And it just takes a moment to start on YouTube. And we're live.
Awesome. All right, so hello everybody who's out there. Give me a moment. Okay, so this is Having Them All, Why Choose? This is going to be our reverse harem panel. We've got some amazing authors today, so we're going to go ahead and start with introductions. Let's go ahead and start with TB Mann.
Get off mute. Hi, everyone. I'm TB Mann, or you can also call me Twyla. And yeah, I write just about anything from contemporary sports to cowboys to, let's see, mermaids and PNR. So yeah, and what you'll find most in my books is that they're full of heart and that, you know, sometimes one man just really isn't enough. So you might as well have more. That's me coming to you live from beautiful Victoria, Canada.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go to Eve Vaughn.
Hi, I'm Eva Vaughn, and I write contemporary, paranormal, sci-fi. I have a little bit of everything, pretty much except for historical. I'm known mostly for writing my alpha hole heroes, and I like the fantasy of writing more than one partner every now and then, just because. Why not? Why not have two or three, sometimes four hunky men catering to the woman's every need?
All right, sounds good. Let's go ahead and go to Eva Chase.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eva Chase, and I write paranormal romance and urban fantasy. I've written a couple of series that are not reverse harem, but pretty much everything I write is reverse harem these days, because once I started, it was just too much fun to go back. Yeah, and I just really like the being able to have a strong female heroine that the guys are willing to share instead of them being all possessive and kind of calling the shots.
Awesome. Rosemary Jones.
Yeah, so I'm Rosemary Jones. So I write a series of different books called Rebel. So Rebel Angels, Rebel Werewolves, Rebel Academy is my latest one. For about 5 years now, I've been writing reverse harem. They're mainly fantasy romance, fantasy, paranormal romance. And I love the way that you can have a strong heroine or anti-heroine, and that love comes in lots of different ways, and that love means love, and that you can have lots of different men who all fit the woman's different needs, and that she fits their different needs. And I think that's what I love most about reverse harem.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, let's go to Desi Lynn.
Hi, I'm Desi Lynn. I mostly write reverse harem and gay romances. I was never a fan of the girl having to choose in stories. So when I stumbled upon reverse harem, it was the perfect answer for me.
Sounds good. And Kelly Williams.
Hi, I'm Kelly Williams. I write under Kay Williams. I write sweet contemporary romance and women's fiction. And RH is actually something I thought that I'd never write. Now here, 3 books later, and I've got another 3 coming out in the next, within the next year. here we are. So it's fun. It's so much fun to write it. It's so much fun to live that fantasy through my books. More than one guy, each one serving a different purpose, making one perfect group there.
Hi, thank you. And of course, I'm Godiva Glenn. I'm also a reverse harem writer, and a lot of my reverse harems are actually part of the Millie Titan world, which she's another author who also writes a lot of menage and such. And so I'll be moderating today, and I'll answer a few of the questions too. Readers, feel free to ask any questions you want in the YouTube chat. We are monitoring that. So that we don't have to just go based on what I have prepared for today. But we'll go ahead and start. So the first question is going to be, what writing challenges do you face that you feel are unique to the reverse harem genre? And we're going to go ahead and start with Kelly Williams.
I think that, can you hear me now? Okay. I think that the biggest challenge in the reverse harem genre is giving each guy or each person enough time with the heroine or without. And also I think that they need, because sometimes when they're together in some books, all they do is talk about her. They don't talk about them. They don't talk about their activities or the things that they like to do. So that's something that's kind of hard to add into because it's really all centered around her. We need to widen the perspective.
All right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Anything to add to that, Eva? All right. Yeah.
There we go.
No,
I definitely,
Eva?
I definitely agree that giving the guys all their time and also keeping all their personalities distinct, and making sure that all of them have just as intense and loving a relationship with a heroine. I mean, I've written up to 5 guys, and I find that, like, even with 5, it gets hard. There's usually 1 or 2 that the readers aren't quite connecting with as much because they just don't end up getting as much page time, or they're not, having the personalities that are quite as engaging. So making sure that they're all different, but they're all equally compelling is definitely the the tricky part.
Okay. Desi, did you have anything to say on it?
I would say another thing that's very difficult and unique to the reverse harem is keeping a balance between the guys themselves, a balance between the relationship of each of the guys and the heroine, and the balance between the relationship as a group and their relationship as a group to the world that they inhabit.
Okay. Let's go to TB.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's just the sheer number of relationships that you're trying to develop. There's, people think, oh, well, 3 people, that's just 2 relationships. But it's actually not. There's 4 relationships the minute you get 3 people that you're trying to build. And with each guy, the number just adds exponentially because there's not just the relationship between her and him, but then there's a relationship between him and each of the other guys involved. Plus, then you start into the group dynamics of what about how do 3 guys handle each other when there's 3 of them who want to go out one night or things like that, because they all have to be able to be friendly. Otherwise, it doesn't really seem realistic because they're not then one cohesive unit. So building up all those different relationships is what's, time consuming, and making sure that they each get that build up.
Okay. Eve?
Basically what everybody has already said, and I would just add that, it's always a challenge to make even if it's a one-on-one relationship that you're writing about, it's a challenge to make your audience love your hero. So you want to, make sure that they love all your heroes in the story. So giving them distinct personalities, giving your reader a reason, or giving them a reason to understand why the heroine loves all of these men or women, and if you're, whatever the combination is. So you want to make a believable enough dynamic that that the reader can see why the person in the center of this dynamic loves all these multiple people individually and as a group.
Yep. Okay. And Rosemary.
I think for me, it's that it's actually a really broad genre. So we think of it as, well, it's just reverse harem, and therefore it's got multiple people. But actually, you have dark or fairy tale retellings, or contemporary, or just the people we've got gathered here today, and we all write actually radically different things. But then within that, it means you have multiple partners who you don't choose at the end. So you've also got to have all the tropes and expectations that the readers want, as well as having this really complex relationship in the middle of it. And the readers that read what we write are very passionate about making sure you get all of that right as well. So I think that that's the challenge. The challenge is not just getting the characterization right or getting the relationships right. It's making sure that you're absolutely on the money with the other tropes that you're writing as well.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, all great answers. Pretty much, I don't even have to answer the question anymore, which is great. So one of the things that came up, well, Eva had brought up, and actually that was going to be one of the questions, so I'll move on to that question. So in the reverse harems that I've written, all of the partners have been men. But Eve made a comment about, it's about the relationships between, the men and the women, or if there's another woman. So Eve, have you written any reverse harem that has a second woman in the group?
I have not, but I have dabbled with it. I've done the male female combination, but I haven't had a second woman where I've written where the men were into each other as well. So that's a whole another dynamic as well. Now, and that's, I should have added that. Do they all touch, or do they just focus on her? So that's something that you have to decide before you write the book. Or, sometimes you might start writing a book and they decide, hey, we like each other too.
Yeah, it is interesting, the concept of the whole, do swords cross? And, all readers have their opinion on it. And I noticed that, some of us authors, we'll go ahead and we'll put that in the blurb. Does it happen? Does it not happen? Apparently that helps to, help readers with it. Has anyone written a reverse harem with a second woman? Desi? No, you haven't? No one? Any plans to? No. Yeah, it does seem to be. Rosemary?
That's interesting, because I have one where the character is gender fluid. So it's a wolf shifter book. It's the Rebel Werewolf series, and one of the princes, male princes, transforms into a female. So part of the book, they are in the harem and they are female. So I very much wanted to write a character, I have for a while, who was gender fluid, and I wanted to write a character that could shift between both. So that was something that I was passionate about writing, and it's kind of halfway. For me, it was a little bit of a putting the feelers out, actually, towards how readers would be towards having a full female member. Some readers loved it, and some readers were very excited about having that within it. I did have some readers who were less open to having that in it and didn't really understand it. Though I have to say, within the world of shifters, there's no reason, if you can shift into a wolf, that you shouldn't be able to shift into a woman, particularly within the dynamic of how I wrote it, that was within my fantasy world, that particular type of wolf did that. But I think that it's interesting to be able to explore both within fantasy and within our genre, to be able to explore that. Male MM is something that I write in most of my series, because I like writing different dynamics, and I'm a strong believer of love is love and different combinations. And it is something I write in my blurbs. But I think that I thought the gender fluid was something interesting. But yeah, it was somebody who could be both.
Yeah. It's something that I've wanted to do actually, but I haven't. I touched on it briefly with kind of an orgy with another female involved, but not where they were permanent partners. And all throughout the book, there were different combinations with the women and the men, and then I throw a woman in the mix, and then people were like, "What the hell?" So, I mean, at the end of the day, we're selling a fantasy mainly to women. And I mean, some people are going to like it, and some people are going to not care for it as much. So that's probably what's held me back. I write what I want to write, but at the end of the day, I gotta say, is it worth the backlash, and do I feel strongly enough about it to write about it? I don't feel strongly enough to deal with the backlash. If I did, I'd go ahead and write it, but I don't feel strongly enough about it, but I'd love to read it.
Awesome. Okay, so that was a good little discussion. So I know Eva mentioned that she had 5 guys in her harem. So let's go to everyone and see how many is too many, and how many do you average whenever you're writing? Personally, I have had always 3 guys. I feel like that's the bare, it's literally the bare minimum. And I have this fear that if I try to add a 4th or even a 5th, then that would be a massive book. So let's go around the group. We'll go ahead. We'll start with Eva, and she can explain why she decided to go with 5.
Well, I have quite a few series at this point, and I only have one series that has 5 guys, and that was my second series. And I think because of finding that a little difficult to juggle that many guys, I've only done it the one time. Most commonly, I do 4. I think that gives a nice variety, and I don't know, there's a nice balance to the dynamics with having 4 guys. I've done 3 guys a couple of times, but only when it's a short series like a trilogy, because I sort of feel like it's harder if it's a shorter series to give all of the guys as much time as they need. So with a shorter series, I tend to do fewer guys. I can't imagine doing a standalone with more than 3. That would be very difficult. But yeah, so I feel like 4 is kind of my sweet spot if there's 4 more books.
All right, let's go ahead and get that same question to Rosemary.
Okay, I'm going to feel terrible now. Basically it's as many as that series needs, is how I feel about it. And I do different things depending on different series. So Rebel Angels, it added to it as it went along. And in that one, it was a bit Laurel K. Hamilton-esque, which is what she does. And by the end of it, I can't even say how many there were. I'd say there was probably there was 1 main per one each, that's 5, but I'd say there were probably about 8 by the end. Rebel Werewolves, there were 3 main ones, but probably 5. Standalone one I'm writing right now has 3, so I agree with Eva on that one. But Rebel Academy has 5. But I don't know. I don't think I'd limit it. I kind of like large casts because I kind of juggle them, but I write very, very long books. So I have sort of 95,000 word book. But I agree. I kind of have maybe 3 really, really central ones, but then I might have a cast of other ones that kind of come in and out of being part of the harem.
All right, that sounds good. I like that. I like that organic approach of, adding them, as you go, and, as many as you feel you need. That sounds good. Kay?
Okay. My books, my first 3 that I have published right now, I have, sorry about that, I'm picking up my face. I have 4, there's 4 in the harem and those. I find it a little bit difficult to add more, to add for the 4. So my second 3 I'll each have 3 in them. 2 of them are already written. I'm in the process of writing 1, and there's only 3 in them. I find that it's the 3, even though it may be a longer book because I have been writing them longer lately. It gives them all a chance to be where I didn't feel like I was able to do it in the 4 book with the 4 of them.
Okay, yeah, I get that. TB?
I usually write anything from 2 to 4, just because I know I'm in a family of 5 with, my husband and 3 kids, and I know how hard it is to get, you know, tables at restaurants and get into a car and all that stuff. So those things are always in my mind when when I'm writing these books, because I'm always thinking the realism and what it, because a lot of them are contemporary. So what are the real world practicalities of it? So that's how come I tend to stick right now to writing the smaller groups. But I've read one that has 9 in it. The woman who founded it, CL Stone, and she's got 9 in that harem. And uh, for the most part, I don't necessarily love each of the male mains though, but there's so many in there to choose from. It's just really nice and delicious. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I know that I've recently read one where there were 5 heroes, and like I could very easily rank them, and the last guy could like totally just go. But I still love it. I love the dynamic and what he brings to the group. But it's like, would I want him with me? No. But I mean, I guess that's one of the great things about writing reverse harem is, you're going to have different personalities, and no, not all personalities are going to get along. So it's okay, because if a reader decides that they don't like this guy, there's others to choose from. It's not like if you're writing standard romance, if the reader doesn't like the guy, then that's it. There's no backup plan. All right.
Exactly. I was going to say exactly.
Yeah. Let's go to Eve.
I generally stick to 2 or 3. I think I like reading the ones with multiple, more than 4 or 5. But I mean, like what TV said of realism, I think about realism like the husband I have now is getting on my nerves. I can't imagine dealing with 5 or 6 men at once. I would lose my mind. So so 2 or 3 is I don't think I've gone past 3 that I can think of off the top of my head. And I also want everyone to love all my heroes. So when I delve into getting past like 3 guys, it's a lot harder to find reasons why she would love them all, and why, giving them all distinct personalities. Well, you have the cocky one, the sweet one, the cuddly one. I mean, like, you can combine some of those, in my opinion. I mean, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm not great at writing more than 2 or 3 guys, but I keep it to 2 or 3. Plus, it would get on my nerves, and all the peed had to clean up around the toilet seat. Ugh.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, that's one of those moments of suspending reality that we do in reverse harem, because nobody's talking about who's doing the laundry, who's doing the cooking, who's going grocery shopping, things like that. I always find it interesting, like the sleeping arrangements, like, because there are some books that just avoid discussing it completely. Others, everybody doggy piles onto one giant bed. or they take turns. You got to think about these things, and especially this is why I write paranormal romance, because there's more leeway. There's more leeway. Kudos to everyone who writes the contemporary reverse harem. I've tried it. It's stressful. It's stressful. But I think Desi hasn't answered this question yet, so we're gonna go to Desi.
My current series has only 3 because it is a shorter series. It's only a trilogy. And the way that particular world works, each individual group only has 4 members to start with. But the biggest harem I've written, I'm actually working on a co-write right now, and that one has 6 guys in it. And it's the first time either one of us have juggled that many guys, and we're finding even at 100,000 words, every now and then we have to go back and go, this guy hasn't seen any page time for about 4 chapters. Maybe we need to figure out where he's at and what he's doing. So that's been a big challenge for us, but we're making it work. Other than that, I like to keep it kind of fluid. Like Rosemary said, for me, the characters kind of insert themselves and do what they're going to do. And every now and then I have somebody who was supposed to be a minor character pop up and say, you know what? Not so much.
All right. Well, that went really well. And something occurred to me while we were thinking about that, and TB had mentioned, getting 5 people into a car. So I know that this is a huge thing, is the motorcycle club romance, and there are reverse harem ones. And I haven't read one yet, but I think it's very interesting because I keep wondering, so does the heroine get her own bike, or does she take turn riding with each of the guys? Have any of you written anything where something like that kind of has to happen, where there's a weird everyday situation where it's made strange by the fact that they're in a harem? Or do we all just avoid it? TV? Oh yeah, no, you can just pop in.
I guess for me, I've written a couple hotel scenes, so I had to be very careful and, had to try to figure out, could they actually get, a suite? But still now with a suite, because they are a dog pile group, is a standard king size going to work, or do the dynamics change when they're in the hotel? Because, they can't all fit in the same bed. So what happens at home has to change. So I do have a few of those types of scenes in there, or even, bathtubs and showers. Doesn't, a standard home is not really set up for more than 1, maybe 2 people to cram into a bathtub or shower, bathtub showers. So how do you do that? Do they have to, in a standard home, or do they end up having to sell and find a new home that, works for them? Because we are limited that way. So
Ellie, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I read one, and they took her to terms with her riding on the back of the motorcycle. They didn't really have, it wasn't a really long one, but it was outside of that, within that story, they took turns riding her on the back of their motorcycles with the MC.
Okay.
So it was pretty good. Yeah.
Sounds fun. I need to read more motorcycle romances. I miss my motorcycle. So one of the I'm probably gonna butcher this screen name, but Sexy Nisi asked, has anyone here written or attempted to write something that passes the Bechdel test? So I'm sure we're all aware of this. What the Bechdel test is, whenever you have, first of all, more than two women. Like, so you have to have at least two women characters. They have to talk to each other, and they have to talk to each other about something other than men. And I know that, I mean, I've definitely done this. I like to have a best friend in there, and I like to have a lot of real world things going on. So I can think off the top of my head, like even like the last reverse harem that I wrote, they honestly talked a lot more about work and family issues than specifically men. Because I mean, and especially I write paranormal romance, but I think all of but one of my heroines has had a job. The one who didn't have a job, she was a princess. And so that's always a big deal, because I mean, yeah, men can come and go, but you got to pay those bills, you know? So let's go ahead and go to Eva.
Yeah, it's always been really important to me to make sure that even though there's all these guys, that there are also female characters for the heroine to interact with in the mix. Most of my heroines have a best friend who they talk to at least somewhat regularly about all different things beyond just romance. And if they're more of a loner, then I usually introduce at least one female character who they get to know over the course of the series and can kind of confide in. And then, of course, there's often, I mean, a fair number of them, their parents have been killed or something, as tends to happen in paranormal and fantasy stories a lot. But, you know, they may have relatives that they can talk to. And most of them don't have jobs. Because they're either younger or like one of them gets fired in the first chapter or whatever, but sometimes there's some work stuff too.
I keep turning off my video instead of my microphone. Just don't mind me. Let's go ahead and go to Rosemary.
I don't think there's definitely not any book, but there's not even that much of any book that doesn't pass that test. In the sense of, it might not necessarily be another woman, but again, like Eva was saying, it could be another man who happens to be a friend. It could be a familiar or a magical creature. I do a lot of my world is magically alive, whether it's a building or whether it's a creature or whether it's a dragon or whatever it is. But my books are, I wouldn't say it's a misunderstanding of the genre, but it's a kind of concept that if you write reverse harem, or that just because they've got multiple love interests, they're constantly thinking about, talking about, or having sex. And although obviously there's a lot of, you know, or not even that, because, you know, if you have a slow burn reverse harem, then, you know, you might not be having, you know, more than holding hands in your first book. It depends what you write. But in my books particularly, which are kind of medium burn, there are sexy times, but at the same time, I write a lot of action and a lot of world building, and there's a lot of fantasy in there. And usually there's an apocalypse, or they're saving the world or something. And in the middle of that, they're talking about how to save the damn world. And then in the middle of that, something happens and they're having sexy times. Not, you know, it's a strong heroine, and she's not just looking around at the guys the whole time thinking, well, which one of these am I going to add to my harem next? So yeah, and particularly friendship is really important, and for the guys, friendship is really important. They become friends first before they become lovers, or certainly at the same time as they become lovers. So yeah, I think that's maybe a side of the genre that's,
I mean, I definitely, I don't feel that question was meant to like put us on the spot or anything like that, but it is an interesting question. And especially because it kind of made me think, like, how often do my guys talk to each other about something other than the heroine? I think that would be the real test, that there probably are points where I'm not passing that, because it's like, I'm always going to be aware and have, you know, the best friend or something, a magical familiar, you know, that really makes sense. And that's normal, because we don't, it's a spectrum, right? Whether you want the super steamy or anything. But I mean, I know that clean reverse harem exists. So obviously we're not just all just, you know, throwing, you know, the sex scenes in there just because all willy nilly. So, But yeah, that is something interesting to consider. Let's see. I have Eve.
I always try to get, well, I don't think I've written a heroine who doesn't have a job. I've always tried to give her a friend or a family member outside of the relationship. But I'm careful about my female, who I add like now, because normally people are like, well, when is that person's book going to come out? So I've made them family members, or like they have a male best friend. But a lot of times, they do have interests outside of the love story to, builds character. I feel makes him a more relatable person. I'm sorry, my daughter and my dog are like fighting in the corner. Sorry.
Okay. No worries. No worries. TV.
Yeah, I make sure that they have a life outside. I don't often write necessarily the female best friend. I've got a couple books with it, but normally I don't, only because that isn't me. So I always feel like a fraud. I was one of those girls who grew up with all my friends were guys. That was it. So sometimes that female interaction just baffles me a little bit at times. So in order to make it real for me and real for my writing, then I draw on things that I know. So it tends to end up being that her guys are her best friends, because I'm a relationship person, not just a sex, but relationship. So to me, that is the biggest thing. And that's where I throw a lot of my focus, is them building up that relationship. And it can be even trying to bring one of the guys into her outside interest to see if they can have interests together, those types of things, rather than just separate relationships from outside of the harem.
Sounds good. Let's go to Kate.
Okay. Yes. In my first book, she has her brother. She talks to her brother. She has no female friends. And my books are about relationship building. Also, it's what There's a whole lot about that. And my second two books, they're a duet. And she starts off at 11 years old, and she makes friends with these guys long before they get together. Now she did have a friend at school, but the friend was like literally one person away from just not talking to her anymore because she was trying to hang out with the popular crowd. Um, my the two of them that I'm in rewrites for, it's she made friends with one of the guy's sisters, and the second book is the sister, so the sister's book. And the one that I'm working on now, she has a friend, but her friend is like 1,200 miles away because they just moved where they're at. So she talks to her friend on the phone, and she talks to her sister along, with the guys. So yeah, I like to have like a small, at least a little type story outside of the harem, because life is about relationships in the end, whether it's a good relationship or it's a bad relationship. That person that you pass up at the mall, it's just two, you know, two people meeting in the night, just for that brief second. It can have an impact on you. So you want to look at those little things while you're doing them to make sure that, to put them in there so you can have something outside of that, of the guys. I like my people to have an outside interest.
Okay, and Desi.
So, like TB, I've always related on a personal level to better to guys than I have to girls. So writing that female relationship is difficult for me. I have a female best friend, but even she tends to be like me, on that guy level, and that's how we connected. So it's a little harder to write, but I do try to make sure that my female character has relationships outside of the harem of some kind, whether it's a best friend of some kind, family members. For me, I feel like it's important for the female to have outside relationships and not be completely wrapped up in this incredible and complicated romance that she's got going on. That she's got to have something else for her own purposes and for her. So she doesn't lose herself into that relationship and in those guys. So I think the best relationship I've got currently going right now is my one series I have. She's got a future stepmother that she's been introduced to in book 2, who becomes a bigger part of her life in 3. And that's been an interesting relationship to write, not being a stepmother myself. So it's been, I've had to talk to a friend of mine who is a stepmother and kind of feel out how a relationship like that works. So that's been a challenge.
Okay, and we've got another reader question now. And this kind of harkens back to what we were talking about earlier when I was talking about, setting things in a paranormal world makes some social conventions easier. So Kimberly is asking, do the authors find it easier to set the world completely different social setup from Earth or make it alternate Earth? And this is an interesting concept. So my reverse harems, the Otherworld shifters, are actually set on Earth. But it is a different social setup because shifters are out in the world. So now that doesn't mean that reverse harem just gets a pass. Neither doesn't mean Menage gets a pass, but there are, the shifters do tend to be more accepting of it, obviously. And it really becomes and who cares what everybody else thinks. But I'm going to go ahead and pass this question to TB.
So yeah, that's interesting. When I write contemporary, of course, it's this world. So the same social conventions happen. So people, make comments if they're out at a bar and they see something about them, they make comments. They're not necessarily well received in the general public for who they are and what they are. So I do show that. In the paranormal worlds, right now all my paranormal books are part of other worlds, so I usually go with whatever their convention has been. So yeah, sometimes it's acceptable, sometimes it's not. It does make it easier, but all of those worlds have been set on this earth, just that shifters and paranormal creatures are out there, whether they're still quiet from the rest of humans or whether humans know. But otherwise, everything else is pretty much the same.
Okay, and Eva?
Yeah, I think I do what's pretty standard in paranormal romance and urban fantasy in general, which is that, they're supernatural creatures and communities living alongside regular Earth, and most ordinary people don't find out about them because they're being secretive. The only exception to that across my series is I have a Wonderland-inspired series where the heroine goes through a looking glass into Wonderland, and so there's a whole nother world. And in Wonderland, they're very laissez-faire about romantic and sexual relationships. So it's totally acceptable there. She still has to navigate it when she's talking with her, her mom and her best friend back home, what exactly is going on. but all the other ones, the magic stuff is separate. But still, in quite a few of the supernatural communities, it's unusual for somebody to have more than one partner. So they still have to navigate, like, are we really going to do this? And is this going to be okay? And sometimes there's potential magical consequences of it that could be good or could be bad. So that actually makes it more fun to more conflict is always good.
Okay, Desi.
So my current series is a paranormal that is hidden in our own world. And the social conventions are a bit dual for them because their paranormal society is much more accepting. They have uh, different social values and stuff for their society, but they live and function in our world. So when they're in their own individual safe zones, they can act one way, and when they're just out among the world at large, they have to stick to the normal social conventions that you would see in our own world.
All right. Kate?
Well, with me writing contemporary, mine is always based in the real world. So they do tend to run across real world issues. Like in one, the parents found out. Well, they actually found out before she did because they were kind of listening in on the conversation. And they were okay with it because I always thought that she would end up with one of their sons, but she ended up with all of them. And all, yeah. And then you have, when you go out to a bar, like I had a bar scene where a girl came up and was trying to hit on one of the guys. So you have that issue. And then you just have different little things that happen, that's based in the real world. Now, there's always that crazy next door neighbor, who isn't based in the real world or something like that. But yeah, all of mine are based in the real world, current time. That's
Yeah. So Eve?
I believe that I think all of the ones that have more than two partners, all of the more than two guys, the three guys, they're all paranormal, have some type of paranormal element to it. But most of my two guys to one girl, those are mostly contemporary. And and they're just real people, and they're just sharing, and then people just have to deal with it. And yeah, I write about some of the challenges they face and some of the things that people say about them, but I feel like it's a more workable solution or situation when you're just dealing with two people in the real, a two people versus one person dynamic in the real world. So yeah, more than two. Yeah, I usually have a paranormal element to it, and it's already something that's already established between the guys because they know beforehand they're going to share this woman.
And Rosemary? I'm sure she'll be like right back. Everything that everyone was saying was kind of reminding me of the fact that I grew up in Louisiana in a very small town. When I started dating a guy, my grandparents knew by the time I got home from school on the day we started dating. So whenever I see like small town romances and everything, and it's like I think about like a small town reverse harem, I'm like, oh man. I think in normal society, you kind of take for granted that, I mean, people for a large part, will mind their own business. You know, you might get comments here or there, but you live in a small town in Louisiana, everybody's going to be up in your business. Cousins are going to be running into you all the time and everything, and you're going to be the target of so many phone call chains and everything. So it looks like Rosemary's having some connection issues. We're getting towards the end of our time, so what I would like to do now is go through and the authors can talk about their upcoming reverse harem books that they're working on. Recommend a book for if somebody's just starting in on reading your world, what's your one book you would recommend? And if you are doing a giveaway, as some of our authors are doing a giveaway, then you can go ahead and mention that. I'm going to go ahead and start with Eve.
So you can find me on www.evevaughn.com. I have a readers group, Eve Vaughn Books on Facebook. The reverse harem book I'm working on now is actually with my writing partner. I also write under the pen name Taylor Vaughn with Theodore Taylor, and it's the next book in our Alien Overlord series, and it's 2 aliens, 1 human. So you should be ready for some hot alien sex. I am having a giveaway this week in my group, and it's not necessarily open to new people. It's open to everybody. Giving away a $10 gift card. Just having a random drawing in my group. So if you want to join, it's Eve Vaughn Books on Facebook.
Awesome. Welcome back, Rosemary. You can go ahead and answer the last question. And then on top of that, go ahead and mention any upcoming reverse harem projects that you have. Recommend a book for if anyone's just finding about you today. And yeah, go for that.
Thank you. So the last question is that I created a rebel set of worlds. So I sidestepped the whole thing really by creating my own universe called the Rebel Universe, where my rebel angels would live and my rebel vampires and my rebel werewolves and all of them. And it's basically an alternate world, an alternate set of universes. And although it's basically like our world and the humans are essentially the same, everything else is different. And that works really well. And it means that I can connect all my books up and they all connect together, and you can read one and it leads on to the other. But it also helps me because it means I can create all the rules and I can create how they all interact with each other and how they all love each other. And it doesn't have to be identical to our Earth either. And what I'm writing right now is this week, Rebel Academy releases, which is my new series, which is where in all the worlds I've just talked about, if there's any that are too bad, they get sent to Rebel Academy. So the Fae, the elves, the vampires, the gods, any that are too supernaturally bad, they get sent to the Rebel Academy, where they're haunted by the wickedest witch of them all. So that's what I've been working on this year, and that's what's just releasing. And that hasn't quite come out yet. So the series that kind of leads into it, because they all kind of connect, is Rebel Werewolves, which we've kind of talked about today, and that's complete. So I'd say that was the one for people to start with. That's a kind of entry series. And I have, because it's release week, I have quite a lot of giveaways in and really exciting events happening in Rosemary's Rebels, who are my really awesome street team and readers group. So if anyone wanted to come and join us and see what's going on this week, that would be great.
Okay, that's great. Eva?
So I'm going to start with what people should read if they want to get started with my books. I think my 2 most popular books are Claimed by Gods, which is my Valkyrie series, Their Dark Valkyrie, and Cruel Magic, which is my Royals of Villain Academy series. And those are kind of, if you like more adult urban fantasy stuff where you love Norse mythology, I'd go with their Dark Valkyrie. And if you like Academy stories, Paranormal Academy, especially if you like a bit of a bully element and enemies to lovers, go with Royals of Villain Academy. What I'm working on right now is I have a trilogy called Curse Studies. This is the first book, which is another sort of Academy series, but it's more gothic-y, paranormal, kind of a haunted / cursed school with sort of Beauty and the Beast overtones. And the third book in that trilogy is going to be out next month. And I'm also releasing a box set of my entire Witches Consort series, which is the one that has the 5 guys in it. And that's going to be out in a couple weeks. So I have lots of stuff going on. And I don't have a giveaway going on at this exact moment, but I have giveaways all the time in my reader group as well, which is Eva Chase's Minions of Magic, if anyone wants to look for that on Facebook.
Awesome. Sounds good. Desi?
My current series is the Elementum Genus series. It starts with Claiming Flame. That is the best place to start, as I'm currently working on book 3 of that one to close out that trilogy. That is an introductory trilogy into my Elementum world, and there will be a bigger set planned in the near future, depending on how quickly I can write it. Other than that, I'm currently working on the co-write I mentioned. It's a alternate history with witches and witch hunters. So it's been a bit of a massive project for me and my co-author for a couple of years now. We're both really excited, hopefully, to get that going in the near future. And then I'm also working on a shifter series that's more young adult based. So we'll see how that one goes. My readers group on Facebook is Desi's Den, if anybody is interested in popping in over there.
Sounds good. Awesome. Let's go on to Kay.
Okay. It depends on what you like to start off on my books. If you want YA, you would start off with my current releases, because both of the books in the duet are out. Jameson Choice, the Second Chance series. It starts when she's 11. The second book, I think she's about 25 when it ends. And then then if you want something newer, like new adult, it's Fighting the Odds. And that's a single book by itself. What I'm currently working on now is 4 Makes One. And 4 Makes One and Love Makes Us One. That's a title in progress. Those are both in rewrites right now. So I'm doing rewrites on both of those. And I'm currently working on a YA called Jump Shot. It's a sports reverse harem, RH. To find me, if you want to come over, I have them every now and then, giveaways. I'm in K. Williams Author. And you can also find me, TB, and Desi in Rebels of Romance group. And we're in there. And I think I answered them all.
All right, thank you. And now let's go to TB then.
Okay. If you want to start with my books on the contemporary side, I would probably start with Junior A. It's the prequel story into my Red Line Hockey series, which is actually a series that follows 3 professional hockey players who are brothers and how they find their unique forms of love. So that would be a good introduction. I just had a release 2 days ago, so on the paranormal side. So if you're looking, there's Narcotize, House of Mermaids. It's in the Wicked Reform School World Series that Rosemary is also a part of, as well as a whole bunch of other reverse harem authors. So that one's kind of cool. And I also have a release next Friday, or actually, yeah, next Friday. I think it is the 15th, in one of Millie's worlds in A Sassy Ever After, called Dragon in Disguise. And that one is an MMF book. So I'm excited about that. If you want, you can find out all the information on www.tbman.com or join my readers group, which is Love and Manners on Facebook. And I'm doing a takeover this afternoon in the Reverse Harem Readers group, so RHR. So feel free to join. That way you'll get all the latest stuff and things on Reverse Harem. It's a fairly large readers group, just had over 12,000 people in that one. So feel free to come join. And yeah, my takeover's in 4 hours from now. So come join. I'll have lots of giveaways in there.
All right, awesome. Looking forward to those releases. So I'll keep this brief because we are pretty much out of time. But if you wanted to start reading my books, my reverse harems are all in the same series. And you could start with this one, Playing with Fire. This is a really fun one. It's reverse harem. The lead, she's a bear shifter, and she's the leader of her clan. So she's, definitely a badass, strong woman. And two of the guys that she ends up with are firefighters. So it's really exciting. It gets kind of dangerous and everything. And there is a twist. I would say really any of my reverse harem books in my Otherworld Shifters books, they're all standalones. So you could start with any of them. My next reverse harem book actually isn't coming out until November just because my writing schedule is insane. But if you want to keep up with me, I'm all over Facebook. I do have a readers group, which you can find from my Facebook author page, which is just Godiva Glenn. Thank you to everyone who joined us, readers. Thank you for the authors for giving us your time. This has been awesome. Bye.